మన విజయీ భవ లైవ్ కార్యక్రమానికి ముఖ్య అతిథిగా విజిటింగ్ ప్రొఫెసర్ మరియు లైఫ్ కోచ్ అయినటువంటి కళ్యాణ్ చక్రవర్తి గారు ముఖ్య అతిథిగా వచ్చేస్తున్నారు. వారు ఈరోజు కొత్త అంశంతో మీ ముందుకు వచ్చారు. అలాంటి అంశాన్ని మీరు ఎప్పుడూ విని ఉండరు. అలాంటి అంశము క్రాస్ కల్చర్ ఇష్యూస్ అనే అంశం మీద చక్కగా సాధారణంగా ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నాం. స్వాగతం, సుస్వాగతం అనగా.
Namaste, Vijay Bhava. It's a wonderful topic actually. I appreciate the organizers for talking about this issue. It's called cross-cultural issues and communication. As all of you know, there are many companies across the globe trying to establish their branches in many countries. And they're also trying to recruit employees from various backgrounds, various ethnic groups, various geographical areas, various provinces with diversified cultures and different languages. Naturally, they all have different skill sets. So imagine a company which is starting a branch in India, recruiting Indians, where for every 100 kilometers, there is a different culture. And every 100 kilometers, the way of eating, the way of thinking, the way of dressing, everything changes and different language. Nearly there are 1500 to 2000 languages in India, I heard somewhere. And some of the languages do not have script. And officially, some 20-25 languages are recognized. And English is the medium of instruction, official language, and Hindi is another language. This is the context in India. Now, imagine a company like Novartis is coming to India. Novartis is a European company which started in Hyderabad or in India somewhere. Imagine a European is first time visiting India. What type of situation it is? Or an Indian is for the first time visiting America or UK or Middle East, for example. What kind of mind, what kind of feelings will be there? That's a thing actually. So when you think of all these things, this cross-cultural issues and communication comes into picture. Cross-cultural issues. Culture is a very big subject. And when it comes to cross-cultural or intercultural situation, it is a complicated thing. But if you are well aware of these things, then at workplace, you will have a lot of pleasure in working with diversified groups. That is the idea. Cross-cultural issues. When we talk about this, we come across Geert Hofstede, an expert in this cross-cultural area. He says, culture is more often a source of conflict than of synergy. Cultural differences are a nuisance at best and often a disaster. Professor Geert Hofstede, Emeritus Professor, Maastricht University. I quote Hofstede here. If you want a reference, it is there, readily available on the slide. And what is this culture initially? Culture includes appearance, attire, feelings, and reactions, traditions and customs, songs, food, habits, communication with global technology. All these things put together, it is called cross-cultural issue or cross-cultural communication. It can be linked to anything, but as a subject, cross-cultural issues. Hofstede dimensions of national culture. He gave some dimensions. So some introduction about Geert Hofstede. He was living between 1967 and 73, analyzed the large database of employee value scores collected within IBM. International Business Machines is an organization known to everybody. It covered more than 70 countries, from which he used the 40 countries with the largest groups and extended the analysis to 50 centuries and 3 regions. Studies include respondent groups as commercial airline pilots and students in 23 countries, civil service managers in 14 countries, upmarket consumers in 15 countries, and elites in 19 countries. That was a huge database. He collected and interpreted, analyzed, then published something with his famous cultural dimensions. How do you measure a culture actually? Are there any dimensions? How do we know? If we have to categorize culture into certain understandable chunks, then how it should be? That's what Hofstede studied. The values that distinguished country cultures categorized into 4 groups. These became the Hofstede dimensions of national culture. According to Hofstede, power distance, which is called PDI for short, individualism versus collectivism, IDV, masculinity versus femininity, MAS, and uncertainty avoidance, UAI. These are the 4 dimensions suggested or observed by Geert Hofstede. Then, in 1991, Michael Harris Bond added the 5th dimension by conducting research on international students together with Chinese professors based on Confucian thinking. That dimension was called long-term orientation, LTO, and was applied to 23 countries. Based on Confucius philosophy, these Chinese professors added something, and along with Michael Harris Bond, they added 5th dimension called LTO, long-term orientation. Then the subject went on evolving. In 2010, Michael Minko generated 2 dimensions using recent world values. One was a new dimension, and the second was more or less a replication of the 5th dimension. The number of country scores for the 5th dimension could now be extended to 93. On one hand, the 5th dimension of Bond and of Minko correlate strongly, yet the constructs are not fully identical. In 2010 edition of Cultures and Organizations, the 6th dimension has been added based on Michael Minko's analysis of the world values. The new dimension is called indulgence versus restraint, IND for short. Indulgence versus restraint. Actually, we have seen the 4 dimensions. Then the 5th dimension was added by Michael Harris Bond. Then the 6th later on in 2010 was added by Michael Minko. So these are the developments. Now, we can have a comprehensive look about these cross-cultural things. Indulgence versus restraint, long-term versus short-term thinking, it means planning, thinking, whatever. Masculinity versus femininity, which deals with, accepting power or being under the power, agreeing to the power or showing power, dominance, such things come here. Tolerance of uncertainty, means some people avoid uncertainty, some people embrace uncertainty, interpret or accept in those terms. Then individuality versus collectivism. Some cultures, people are highly individualistic, like Western world. The studies showed that. And when you come towards the Eastern world, collectivism is seen more in Asian countries and Far East also. Then power distance. For example, in the hierarchy of a company or hierarchy in a social system or wherever, the power distance is maintained in certain cultures. It means when elders come, people stand up and touching feet and obeying, being very obedient. When the boss comes, people are bending and showing their respect. It happens due to the cultural aspect and more so with the psychological and emotional aspect, because they tend to show respect in Eastern countries. But whereas in Western world, it may be interpreted in a different way. So these are some of the aspects. Now, cultural dimension and some examples are given here. For example, power distance is the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations within a country expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. This power distance is low in US and Canada, it seems, but it is high in Japan and Singapore. It means Eastern world. Then we come to the second aspect, the dimension, individualism and collectivism. Individualism describes cultures in which the ties between individuals are loose, whereas collectivism describes cultures in which people are integrated into strong, cohesive groups that protect individuals in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. Now look at the examples. Individualistic societies, countries where this individualism is dominant is US, Australia, and Great Britain. Maybe in some of the European countries also it can be there. It is difficult to say this country and that country because in these areas it is found more as per the experts and the studies. Whereas collectivistic countries are supposed to be Singapore, Hong Kong, and Mexico, even India and many Eastern countries. Then the third dimension is masculinity and femininity. Masculinity pertains to cultures in which social gender roles are clearly distinct. Femininity describes cultures in which social gender roles overlap. Examples: masculinity is seen more in Japan, Austria, and Italy as per the studies. Femininity is seen in Sweden, Norway, and Netherlands. We cannot be sure of this. It is studies are showing this, but these things may shift here and there. They may be found anywhere. I mean, it all depends on that social group, that ethnic group, and so many other people, other areas where these dimensions are seen in cultures. Then the fourth dimension is uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance is the extent to which the members of a culture feel threatened by uncertain or unknown situations. The example is given here. Low uncertainty avoidance is seen in Singapore, Jamaica, and Denmark as per the studies. But it can be in India also. Then high uncertainty avoidance is observed in the countries like Greece, Portugal, and Japan. And it may vary. Then another dimension is Confucian dynamism. Confucian dynamism denotes the time orientation of a culture defined as a continuum with long-term and short-term orientation as its two poles. Examples: in countries like China and Japan, you can see this long-term orientation, and US and Canada, you can observe short-term orientation. So these are the studies about cross-cultural things. Now, 6 dimensions of national cultures. Number 1 is power distance index. Number 2 is individualism versus collectivism. Number 3 is uncertainty avoidance index. Number 4 is masculinity versus femininity. 5th is long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. 6th is intelligence versus restraint. More examples are given on the website given below. You can observe that. Now, cultural issues in some countries. I can tell you many issues about many countries where I have visited. For example, Maldivian shock 1998. I happened to work there. I have observed that people generally, there is a very good collectivism is there. People are very nice and cooperative. They depend on fish and bananas. But, when we talk to them, when you say, do you understand me? They raise the brows like. Do you understand me? They raise the brows like. It means in any culture, raising eyebrows means questioning again. But it seems in that country, it is yes. I think that is the only country where people raise eyebrows for saying yes. So Arabian experiences are there, Turkish experiences, Azerbaijan, European lifestyle, And Corona 2020 has given us a lot of differential dimension to culture. It needs more time, but when time requires, I will take it. But here I am stopping for a while because there could be some questions also. Yes. Any questions here, please?